Greetings and welcome to my new calculus channel. My name is John Gabriel, and today I'm going to be discussing the definitions in Book 5, particularly 11, 12, and 13. So, without further ado, let's begin. Now, on the surface, or on first investigation, these definitions might not be appearing to say much, but they're actually important, and they're there for a very good reason. So let's look at those definitions and see what they say. So definition 11, by the way, according to Heath, says that the magnitudes are said to be corresponding, the leading to the leading and the following to the following. Well, actually, definition 11 is a clarification on the homology of ratios. Okay, now what does that mean, homology? It means that the antecedents and the consequents, which are the aliquot parts of a ratio, must maintain their relative position in a ratio. What does that mean? That means that, for example, these ratios, if we had a ratio like that, okay, and all the above ratios here are in proportion, but they're not equal. But if we had to switch the 3 with this 2.868, then these ratios would no longer be in proportion, okay? So if we had to switch the 3 with the with either of these two, the ratios would no longer have a proportion, okay? So it deals with homology, okay? So for example, if you have the proportion P colon Q to R colon S, the antecedents P and R must maintain the same relative position in the ratios. Meaning that if you meaning that Q colon P would not be proportional to R colon S, but Q colon P is proportional to S colon R. Okay, that's what definition 11 is telling us, and it's further clarified in definition 12. So let's see, what does definition 12 say? Now, his translation in this case is once again misleading because the actual Greek text says nothing about equality or setting it equal to. And of course, he's got that in parentheses, which means that that's what he thought. So although he didn't actually state it per se, and that was his opinion was wrong, meaning he did not understand. Okay? So let's see why, let's see exactly what definition 12 is telling us. I'm not going to read the Greek because it's not going to mean anything to you. It tells us this. It says that you can take any combination of the magnitudes in the ratios, provided they maintain their relative position. So these are just a few examples of how you could flip the magnitudes around. And you'll see now in definition 13 that it clarifies definition 12, which says that the ratios can have inverse proportions of all the previous ratios. So, for example, you can look at these ratios, which are inverses of these ratios, and I'll let you have this text in the detail section of the video. So, observe immediately that none of these definitions would be valid. None of these definitions here would be valid if, for example, 0 were considered to be a magnitude. 0 is not a magnitude. You can't have no magnitude. So, for example, if you had to say 0 colon x, where x is an actual magnitude, a well-formed magnitude, proportional to 0 colon x, it would render definition 13 to be ill-formed. You couldn't do it because neither of these have quotientness. What does quotientness mean again? We saw an earlier meaning of that. It means that there exists no magnitude that measures both 0 and x, where x is a well-formed magnitude. Okay, in other words, not 0. So in fact, there is no actual ratio 0 colon x because there is nothing to compare with x, and we already know that 0 colon x literally means 0 compared with x. Okay, can you see how absurd it is when moronic math professors say things like the ratios 0:1 and 0:8 are equivalent. They're not even actual ratios. They're just gibberish, okay? And this, my friends, is why so many morons call zero a number in mainstream mathematics, because the apes have never understood the elements of Euclid, in particular Book 5, which lays the foundation for number, okay? Its properties and all the arithmetic operations that are realized in geometry. The ancient Greeks didn't suddenly wake up one morning and miraculously understand that a third times 2/5 is equal to 2/15. That didn't happen. There was no such miracle. And of course, you should stop and meditate on this for a long, long time. They did not whimsically define, as do topologist orangutans do things in topology, that 1/3 times 2/5 is 2/15. It didn't just happen whimsically or by miracle. This is a practice that you find that is held by the imbeciles in the Church of Math Academia. Okay, they've never understood these things, and so they've ignored them. Quotientness leads to a provision of a name that identifies, and quotientness should actually become a word, because in Greek, pilikotita means quotientness. Okay. Should actually become a word in English, leads to the provision of a name that identifies the measure of an antecedent magnitude in a given ratio, leading to the definition of number. A number is a name given to a measure that describes a magnitude, in particular the antecedent of a ratio, or size. Both the magnitude and size refer to the antecedent. Now, you all thought that I came up with this brilliant definition, didn't you? Well, I wish I could take the credit for it. But my ancestors were the ones that realized these things over 2,300 years ago. Their clarity of thought was unmatched by any before or after them, okay? Now, so before I continue, I'm not going to do any more in this video, but we're almost at the end of the definitions in Book 5, and then we'll start on the very interesting propositions and work through those, because Book 5 is the most important book in the elements. It lays the foundations for, in fact, it completes all the arithmetic that you get in algebra, because all the properties of arithmetic in algebra are transferred to algebra via geometry. You didn't suddenly get 1/3 times 2/5 is equal to 2/15 in algebra because somebody who didn't know anything about geometry, just decided, oh, that's a good definition. Let's go with it. That didn't happen. Okay. There are general definitions for the 4 arithmetic operations in geometry, and they are transferred intact to algebra through the abstract unit. And I've been telling you about this the past few videos, so go back and study those videos and think about what I'm telling you. I do know better than anyone else. I am a genius. I am smarter than anybody else on the planet where mathematics is concerned. That's not arrogance. It's a fact. Okay? And the only mental illness I have is depression. So be very careful by believing the rot that you read about me on the internet, especially by those jealous bastards in the mainstream. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you'll join me again next time. My name is John Gabriel. This is New Calculus Channel. Goodbye.